Now we're going to move to my perspective guest today. And since when has Russia been possessed by a demon that causes it to throw tantrums, utter unintelligible curses and absurd accusations, and hurl itself foaming at the mouth at its neighbours in an attempt to rip out their throats? That's not my question. It's the question posed today, my guest today, in his latest book, as he tries to understand how, as he puts it, a society that tried to rebuild itself after the dark years of communism reversed course and voluntarily walked through the gates of dictatorship. Dmitry Glukhovsky is a Russian journalist and writer, best known for the science fiction novels Metro 2033. His latest book, which is in French, I've lovely translated it for you, as A Diary Under Dictatorship, How I've Seen Russia Change. He has also in his time been a reporter for television news, roving around the world. His criticism of Russia and the invasion of Ukraine means he's wanted status in Russia. Thanks very much for coming in and talking to us on the programme
thank you.
Today. Obviously, reading the premise of your book, our viewers just heard me say some of it. I'm translating it there. You're very negative about the regime in Russia, obviously. Tell us more and tell us why.
Well, actually, I think that nothing condemns Russia to be inherently hostile to the West, except for Vladimir Putin's regime. And then this particular regime, as many other authoritarian regimes, because of their inner logic, it has to go justifying the deficiencies and the increasingly poor level of life quality by the external reasons. So we've seen many authoritarian regimes, actually practically all of them, justifying the increasing level of repression, the unchanging, failing to rotate authorities like the governments by the evil forces outside. And the longer the autocrat stays in power, the more he tends to accuse the outside, and in particular the West, the Anglo-Saxon, or the whatever you call it, the Mason, the Freemason conspiracy or something, of the situation that is inside the country. We've seen it in Iran, we've seen it in North Korea, we are seeing it increasingly in China, and we've seen it in Russia, of course.
Where does it come from? I mean, you talk in the book, don't you, about the rebirth of the cult of Stalin, the power the authorities have over the Russian media as well, you talk about.
Well, I think that the roots of that are also the lack of legitimacy. And then when Vladimir Putin was running for his third term, he had, of course, to explain to the people why is this happening, why was this happening, and the legitimacy he could find was this great patriotic war, the World War II in the Russian version and Russian treatment of it, saying that there have always been an existential fight with the outside sort of forces of evil, and then we have always our special way, and then the other way we had to go was through that. Stalin, in this regard, is also an example, an inspiring example of an autocrat who was this strong man ruling the country with an iron fist, and that's also an example of how Vladimir Putin could have stayed in power longer. So that was definitely an inspiration. Then the great victory in the Great Patriotic War has increasingly become, from Vladimir Putin's second term and onwards, towards his indefinite term in power, as an explanation of why is everything different in our country. So we have won this fight. That this victory is sacral. Stalin is beyond criticism. So this gives us, his heirs, a legitimacy to rule you forever. And I think that the war in Ukraine, to make this statement more actual, was one of the reasons for it to start, was to win a new victory, sacral victory, in what will be represented as a new existential sacral fight with the entire world, and say, we are the winners of it. So we are now beyond, like Stalin, beyond criticism. We have the right and legitimacy to rule forever and to pass the power onto our heirs that we designate.
Do you see any chink in the armour? Do you see any way that change could come from within?
Well, actually, Vladimir Lenin, who was the last person changing the situation from within proactively, stayed in Geneva waiting for the revolutionary situation to ripe before he could come and rip it. So I would say that the current course of Vladimir Putin is definitely because of many things, because of the chosen confrontation with the entire world, because of the war that is consuming a half of the state budget for this year, 25, and then will be even probably higher if there is no truce and the conflict is not frozen. This all will weaken Russian economy, and then although the Russian authorities, of course, they are pretending that Russia is invulnerable, it has unlimited reserve of human resource, and then the economy it is stronger than in Soviet times. It is more resilient, but not indefinitely more resilient. So this will be weakening, and after a certain moment, I'm still giving it a few years to go on, even in the state of war, then the situation will become so worse, and the state will not be able to carry out its social obligations, providing people. Well, right now it's bribing people to join the army. Right now it's buying their loyalty instead of forcing them to go to war. If it runs out of money to actually bribe people and bribe the allies in Europe and in the States, on social media and inside the country to maintain, to support Russian aggression, and it will be only based on fear and coercion. In this case, of course, it will not be holding for long. So just in this case, right now, all the opposition leaders in Russia are either killed or emigrated, forced to emigrate. So, and then the regime is still too strong because it has the money to carry on this aggression, and it has the money to bribe the allies and the people inside Russia for loyalty.
What about you yourself? Why do you feel the need to speak out?
Well, actually, I think that has been gradual. You know, I've been pretty expressive regarding the situation in Russia for the last 15 to 20 years, and I've been saying pretty much the same things. You know, in some regards, I've used my fiction texts as a metaphorical description and social commentary of what was going on in Russia. So even the novel Metro 2033 and its sequels, it is actually like a social commentary in disguise, speaking of Russia witnessing the downfall of the Soviet Union and turning back into dictatorship. Well, in a metaphor of people surviving in a bunker and refusing to believe that the war is over, right? And since then, since 2010 probably, when the Russian civil society has attempted for the first time to speak out against the abuse and endless freezing of Vladimir Putin in power, the dispersed demonstrations against the rigged elections and so on and so on. I've just been expressing myself in this regard. But
do you feel safe doing that? Because I mean, you were sentenced, weren't you, in absentia by Moscow in the summer of 2023 to 8.5 years in jail.
Yeah, 8.5. It's like Federico Fellini. It's like it's very cinematographic term in prison to spend. Yeah. Thank you, the Russian authorities, for giving me this number. Yeah, I think that I've just been saying the same thing. So the situation has been changing a lot. This train has been going, like I was on a platform waving my hand, and the train has been going direction Gulag, direction Siberia. And so the things that I've been saying, they started to look like frighteningly bold, you know, even though 15 years ago, 10 years ago, that was just a normal occasional like commentary. I think that it's just important to keep saying the same things, you know, and not be threatened and pressured by that, because people are very. It's normal and totally okay to be conformist. The entire Russia is conformist, but this is exactly how dictatorships come to life. There are 10% of people who want it to change into a fascist dictatorship, and 80% of people who say like, we're just following, we just follow the strong hand. We're too small to resist. We're too tiny to speak out.
Good to talk to you on the programme today. Thank you very much for coming in. Dmitry Glukhovsky, Russian journalist and writer. There's his book, Journal sous Dictature en français, in French. But you told me, how many languages is it in already? 5?
5 and
five languages, hopefully in English soon. We shall see as well. Thank you very much for coming in and talking to us here on France 24.